On a frozen mountain night, a former Navy SEAL and his war-trained dog uncovered a secret that nearly wiped out an entire town. A toxic plot, a storm no one could survive, and one final battle that proved miracles don't always fall from the sky. Sometimes they walk beside us on four paws. If you believe courage, loyalty, and a bit of faith can still change the world, then this story is for you. Before we begin, hit subscribe, tap like, and comment where you're watching from, because what happens next might stay with you long after the snow melts. Snow drifted across Silver Ridge like silent shards of white glass, settling over pine branches and dark earth until the forest looked as if it were holding its breath beneath a frozen sky. Jason Hale pushed deeper into the trees, his boots crunching a steady rhythm beneath him as the cold night wrapped around every inch of his body. At 34, he carried himself with the disciplined stillness of a man shaped by years of war and the heavy cost of surviving it. He wore the only thing he ever trusted, his rugged tan combat uniform and sand-colored tactical pants, the ones that had followed him through too many missions and too many broken places. His coyote brown plate carrier hugged the breadth of his chest, minimal gear strapped tight, black tactical gloves gripping the leash loosely, even though the dog at the other end never needed it. His clean, unscarred face, rare for a SEAL, caught the pale reflection of the moon, angular jaw tense, dark brows drawn tight with the quiet intensity of someone who fought more with silence than with words. His black military watch pulsed faintly against his wrist, the only sound besides the winter wind that whispered through the needles overhead. Rex moved at his side with the fluid precision of a trained Belgian Malinois, 3 years old and carved from lean muscle beneath a sable coat. His ears stayed pricked, his amber eyes scanning with a discipline that mirrored Jason's own. Rex had seen war, had smelled it, had bled for it, and though his calm stride betrayed none of that violence, the alert tension in his frame was the unmistakable mark of a combat K9 who could shift from stillness to lethal action in a heartbeat. Jason always walked the woods at night when Silver Ridge slept. The mountains had become his refuge after leaving the Navy, a place where he could pretend that quiet meant peace and not danger waiting to break open again. But even here, even now, there were nights when he felt the old weight press into his ribs. Tonight the heaviness sat deeper, curling just behind the steady beat of his heart like a memory with teeth. He tried to ignore the sensation, but Rex slowed, nose lifting, breath tightening into short, careful sniffs. Jason stopped instantly. His instincts were too ingrained to question the dog's reaction. "Talk to me," he murmured, voice low and rough against the cold. Rex's muscles coiled. One soft growl vibrated through his chest. Not warning, not aggression, but recognition of something that shouldn't be there. Jason shifted his weight, scanning the forest. The snow-muted darkness offered nothing but still, unmoving trees. But the unease climbing up his spine wasn't imagination. He had learned long ago that danger rarely announced itself with sound. Sometimes it lived in the absence of it. They moved forward, Jason's steps slow and deliberate, Rex tugging slightly as if drawn forward by an invisible thread. The wind shifted. Rex's head snapped to the left. Jason followed his gaze and saw, through the thickening snow, a shape slumped unnaturally near the roots of an old pine. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Something in the air changed, tightened, like the forest itself recoiling. Jason approached, boots sinking into the soft crust of white. Rex surged ahead the final few feet, then stopped cold, tail rigid, ears pinned forward. That was when Jason saw her. A young woman lay half buried in the snow, collapsed on her side with one arm twisted beneath her. Her dark green ranger jacket blended into the shadows, but her face, pale, strained, mouth parted in ragged gasps, stood out in stark contrast. Purple bruising wrapped around her throat like the imprint of unseen hands. Jason dropped to a knee beside her, urgency alive in his chest, but controlled beneath the surface the way he had been trained. The woman's lashes fluttered weakly. She looked around 25 or 26, her features soft but drawn tight with fear and pain. Strands of chestnut brown hair escaped her beanie, frozen at the ends. Her uniform patch read, "Park Ranger, Silver Ridge Conservation." He touched her cheek lightly, not to comfort but to assess temperature. Cold. Too cold. But her skin held a faint chemical sheen, something that didn't fit the environment. The bruises along her neck were worse up close, irregular, blotched like a reaction rather than blunt trauma. "Hey," Jason said quietly, leaning closer. "You're not alone. Stay with me." Her breath trembled, shallow and inconsistent, conscious but slipping. Rex moved to her other side, lowering his muzzle to her jacket, sniffing hard and then suddenly recoiling half an inch. A soft huff escaped him, an alert, clear, and unmistakable. Chemical scent. Not right. Not natural. Jason felt a pulse of cold travel through his chest that had nothing to do with winter. He checked her airway, adjusting her head, keeping her breathing steady. Her pulse fluttered too fast beneath his fingertips. Poison. That thought slipped through his mind before he could block it. Not certainty, but suspicion honed by years of recognizing threats in places that were supposed to be safe. "Rex," he murmured. The dog snapped his gaze to him, waiting. "Watch!" The Malinois planted himself, body solid, breath steady, eyes slicing through the darkness for threats Jason couldn't yet see. With one hand, Jason reached for his phone and dialed emergency services. He kept his voice clipped, calm, clinical, giving the operator their location and the ranger's condition. But his mind was already churning beneath the surface. The bruising wasn't from a fall, the chemical scent wasn't environmental, and the ranger's collapse in the middle of the forest on a night like this, no tracks nearby except her own, made the unease in his gut twist into something sharper. She tried to speak, a choked sound pulling at her lungs. "Don't," Jason said softly, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Your body's fighting something. Save your strength." Tears formed at the corners of her eyes, not from pain, he sensed, but from fear so sudden it hadn't had time to settle. Her gaze locked onto Jason's, searching for something, maybe assurance, maybe truth, maybe permission to let go. He refused to let her find the last one. "You're staying awake," he said, voice deepening. "You hear me? You stay right here." Her lips moved again, but no sound came. She blinked once, slow and pained. Jason's jaw clenched. Memories flickered. Sandstorms, shrapnel, voices calling for medevac that never came. The weight of teammates dying beneath his hands, the crushing silence after. Not now. Not again. Not if he could stop it. Far too many times he had watched life slip through his fingers in the seconds before help arrived. Tonight would not be one of those nights. Rex suddenly stiffened, his body angled to the right, nose slicing through the wind. Jason followed his stare and saw it. Footprints. Not old ones. Fresh enough that the snow had barely begun to fill them. Heavy boot treads leading away from the ranger's position into the deeper forest. Jason's spine went rigid. No sign of struggle near the woman, no defensive wounds, no snow disturbed around her. Whoever left those prints had stood close enough to her to leave a presence, but had made no effort to cover their trail. Which meant they either didn't care who found them, or wanted to be gone before discovery. The wind shifted again, erasing the upper edges of the prints as Jason watched. The storm would bury them within minutes. His breath formed a slow, controlled cloud. Every instinct wanted to follow, to hunt, to confront the threat moving through his woods. But the woman at his feet trembled, breath rattling unevenly. She didn't have minutes to spare. He leaned closer, checking her pulse again. It remained erratic, skipping beats. His voice dropped to a murmur, not for comfort, but to anchor himself. "You're going to make it." The words were quiet, but inside his chest something fierce accompanied them. A promise sharpened by loss, by memory, by every person he couldn't save when bullets and explosions dictated fate. He refused to fail tonight. Red and blue lights flickered faintly between the trees in the distance, growing brighter with each passing second as the emergency team pushed through the snow-laden trail. Rex huffed again, glancing at Jason as if awaiting instruction. Jason nodded, brushing Rex's ear gently. "Good work." The dog relaxed only slightly, though his eyes never left the forest where the footprints disappeared. Jason lifted the ranger carefully as the EMTs approached, describing her condition with clinical precision and stepping back only when they took over. The medic, a stocky man in his early 40s with wind-burned cheeks and sharp eyes, shot Jason a look that lingered too long to be casual. Something like suspicion, something like confusion. But Jason didn't bother explaining himself. Not his record, not his instincts, not the fact that, despite leaving the Navy, danger always seemed to find him. As the stretcher disappeared through the trees, Jason knelt beside Rex again. The prints were almost gone now, faint impressions swallowed by falling snow. "Not an accident," he said quietly. Rex exhaled through his nose, soft but decisive. Jason stood, scanning the empty forest one more time. Somewhere beneath the layering snow, beneath the quiet, beneath the freezing calm, a threat had moved past him, close enough to touch, close enough to kill. The storm thickened, swallowing sound, swallowing tracks, swallowing truth. But Jason Hale had never needed perfect visibility to find danger. He had lived entire years of his life walking toward it. Tonight, the darkness didn't intimidate him. It challenged him. And deep in his chest, something long dormant stirred awake. The quiet hum of fluorescent lights washed over the corridors of Silver Ridge Medical Center as Jason Hale stepped inside, snow melting from his boots and leaving dark prints along the polished floor. The sterile air carried the faint scent of antiseptic, a familiar smell from years of battlefield medics and makeshift infirmaries. It never meant safety to him, only urgency. Jason's rugged tan combat uniform and sand-colored tactical pants contrasted sharply against the hospital's pale walls, but he barely noticed. He moved with the unhurried control of a SEAL who understood pressure intimately, shoulders squared beneath his coyote-brown plate carrier, black gloves tucked into one side, dark eyes scanning the hallway with calculated precision. Rex walked at his side, the Belgian Malinois' disciplined gait steady despite the tension that rippled beneath his sable coat. His ears twitched at each sound, alert but silent, amber eyes sharp enough to slice through every shadow. A nurse approached, a woman in her early 40s with tired blue eyes and curly blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, her pale skin showing the wear of long hours. Her badge read, Nurse Ellen Carver. She stopped a respectful distance from Jason and spoke with the kindness of someone used to frightened patients, not men carved from war. "You were the one who found the ranger?" Jason nodded. "How is she?" Ellen exhaled slowly. "Alive, but barely. The doctors think it's a neurological toxin, fast-acting and not something we've seen around here." Jason's jaw tightened. "Is she awake?" "No. Blood pressure unstable. Heart rhythm irregular. She's fighting." Ellen hesitated. "You saved her life, you know." Jason didn't react. Compliments slid off him like water on armor. He only said, "I need to speak with whoever is treating her." Ellen pointed him toward a door marked Toxicology Consultation Room. Inside, a tall man in his early 50s stood reviewing lab reports under the harsh overhead lighting. He had a lean frame, silver-streaked hair, deep-set brown eyes behind rectangular glasses, and a jaw lined with several days of stubble, less from style and more from exhaustion. His long fingers tapped the clipboard unconsciously, signaling a restless mind. His badge read, Dr. Marcus Layton, Toxicology. Jason introduced himself with a curt nod. Dr. Layton looked him over briefly, taking in the uniform, the disciplined stance, the sharp intensity radiating from Jason's expression. "You're the man who found Ranger Hart, correct?" "Yes." Layton pushed his glasses higher on his nose. "Then let me be clear. Whatever she encountered wasn't environmental. This toxin was manufactured not by a corporation but by hand. unrefined, unstable, yet powerful. Jason felt tension coil through him. Weaponized? Possibly, and whoever made it knew what they were doing. Jason exchanged a look with Rex, who had settled into a sit at his heel but watched the doctor like he was evaluating threat levels. "Can I see her?" Jason asked. Dr. Layton nodded, and together they walked into the dim trauma room. The young ranger lay motionless beneath soft white blankets, a breathing mask secured over her face, chest rising unevenly. In the brighter light, Jason saw additional details. She was fairly tall, maybe 5'7", with delicate bone structure softened by youth. Her chestnut hair fanned across the pillow, and beneath her pale skin were faint blotches, neurological reaction, not bruising from impact. Her nameplate now sat on the table, Ranger Emma Whitlow. Jason exhaled slowly, a controlled breath that masked his growing anger. She was too young, too earnest-looking to be caught in something like this. Her face carried the openness of someone who had believed her job protected nature, not led her into danger. Rex huffed softly, nose lifting as if recognizing the chemical trace still clinging to her uniform. Jason placed a gloved hand gently on the side rail, not touching her but anchoring himself. Dr. Layton cleared his throat softly. "You were military." It wasn't a question. Jason met his eyes. "Navy, Special Operations. Then you understand how toxins like this are used." "Yes," Jason said. "And more importantly, how they're made." Layton nodded grimly. "She mentioned before losing consciousness that she heard something in the woods, something metallic." Jason's attention sharpened. "Tools," he murmured. "Or equipment." "Possibly," the doctor sighed. "If someone is manufacturing toxins out there, we have a serious threat." Jason already knew that. He felt it in the tremor of the forest, the scent Rex reacted to, the footprints fading in the snow. Danger wasn't coming. It was here. As Jason left the hospital, night had deepened. Clouds rolled low over the peaks, heavy with fresh snow. Silver Ridge's streetlights flickered beneath wind gusts that carried the promise of another storm. The town felt too quiet, like the mountains were waiting for something to break. Jason knelt beside Rex in the parking lot, running a hand along the dog's strong neck. "We're going back," he said. Rex's tail lowered, not in fear but readiness. At the edge of the woods, Jason felt that old shift inside him. When the world narrowed, senses sharpened, and the soldier rose in place of the man. The forest greeted them with frigid silence, the kind that swallowed sound and turned every tree into a looming silhouette. They retraced their steps from earlier, Rex's nose close to the ground. The dog's focus intensified, body lowering as scent trails gathered beneath the snow. A few minutes later, Rex stopped completely. Jason followed his gaze. A faint indentation in the snow. Someone had moved branches aside earlier, covering a narrow opening beneath a rocky outcrop. Jason brushed the remaining snow away, revealing a small cave camouflaged by pine boughs and dead branches. Inside, the air reeked of chemicals, sharp, sterile, wrong. Jason ducked his head and stepped inside. A lantern lay shattered on the ground, its glass shards mixed with powdery residue. A wooden crate held vials, some broken, some intact, and several metal containers with residue staining their edges. "So she stumbled into something," Jason murmured. "A lab." Rex moved deeper, paws silent despite the debris. His nose lowered again, and then his muscles stiffened. Jason turned a second before Rex growled low. Footsteps. Fast. Coming toward the entrance. Jason slid behind a stone ledge just as two figures burst into the cave, their heavy boots scattering snow. Both wore dark coats and hoods, faces half obscured by masks but not enough to hide their rugged, hardened shapes. The first man was tall, around 6 foot, with broad shoulders and a stubble-darkened jaw. His hair, visible beneath the hood, was thick and oily black. His movements were sharp, impatient, the type of man used to intimidation, not stealth. The second man was slimmer, maybe 5'9", with narrow eyes and a pointed chin. His light brown hair fell messily around a gaunt face. His hands fidgeted constantly, twitchy, nervous, dangerous in unpredictable ways. Jason studied them silently, memorizing features, posture, behavior. The slimmer man sniffed the air. "Someone's been here." "We left it too long," the taller growled. "If she talked—" "She didn't," the other snapped. "She collapsed before—" His words cut off as Rex lunged from the shadows with explosive force. The slimmer man screamed, stumbling back before Rex clamped onto his forearm with perfect control, painful enough to immobilize, not lethal. The taller man swung a metal rod at Rex, but Jason intercepted him, driving a shoulder into the man's torso. The impact slammed them both against the cave wall. The rod clattered away. The man retaliated with a wild punch, but Jason ducked, sweeping his leg and sending him crashing into the crate of vials. Glass shattered around him. Jason pressed his forearm to the man's throat, pinning him. "Who made the toxin?" Jason demanded. The man spat blood, glaring. "You don't know what you're in the middle of." Jason increased pressure just enough to cut off breath. Not harm, but warn. "Try me." The man only grinned, a cold, knowing expression. "You're too late." Jason pulled him forward and slammed him against the wall again, but a shout from behind made him turn. The slimmer man, still trapped under Rex's grip, jerked violently and kicked up snow from the cave floor, blinding the dog for a second. Rex recovered instantly, but the man wriggled free enough to slip out of his coat and sprint toward the forest, clutching his injured arm. Jason moved to pursue, but Rex barked sharply, a command to stay. And Jason trusted Rex more than any human alive. The dog turned back to the pinned man, teeth bared, ready should he make another move. Jason tightened his hold. "Who are you working for?" The man only smirked again. "We're just the first wave." Jason's expression hardened. He knocked the man out with a controlled strike to the jaw and secured his hands with the man's own belt. Snow drifted into the cave, dimming the lantern glow as Jason surveyed the shattered vials, the residue, the dangerous ingredients. This wasn't small. This wasn't random. This was organized and growing. Rex nudged Jason's hand, amber eyes burning with alertness. "I know," Jason whispered. "It's starting." Outside, the storm finally broke, swallowing their tracks as fast as they were made. Morning light broke reluctantly over Silver Ridge, casting pale gold against rooftops still drowned in snow. The storm from the previous night had finally passed, leaving a quiet that felt unnatural, too still, too restrained, as if the town itself sensed a threat hidden beneath the crisp winter air. Jason Hale stood outside the ranger station in his rugged tan combat uniform, boots crunching into the thin crust of ice that had reformed overnight. His sand-colored tactical pants remained stiff with dried snow, and frost clung to the edges of his coyote-brown plate carrier. Despite the cold, his breathing stayed steady, visible in slow, controlled plumes. Rex sat beside him, posture straight, amber eyes alert, the young Belgian Malinois' injury from the cave fight showing only in the faint way he favored his left hind leg. Jason touched the dog's shoulder gently, fingers brushing the thick sable fur. "You good?" Rex blinked, resolute. The dog didn't know how to complain, he only knew how to endure. Jason's gaze lifted when a dark SUV pulled into the parking lot. The vehicle halted sharply, snow spraying from beneath its tires. The door swung open and out stepped Police Chief Donovan Briggs, a man shaped by years of authority and a life hardened by the relentless flaws of those he swore to protect. He was in his late 40s, tall, around 6'1", with broad shoulders beneath a navy winter jacket lined with department patches. His face was a map of sharp angles, square jaw, prominent cheekbones, and a nose slightly crooked from a break he never bothered to fix. His beard was trimmed short with streaks of iron gray that matched his close-cropped hair. His skin was weathered, olive-toned, carrying the kind of permanent exhaustion etched into men who had seen too much tragedy to remain gentle, but too much humanity to become cruel. Briggs approached with heavy steps, boots sinking deep. His brown eyes were stern but not cold. They held clarity, calculation, and a lingering exhaustion of someone who spent more nights awake than asleep. "Hail," he greeted, voice gravelly, roughened from too much coffee and too little rest. "I've been looking for you." Jason nodded. "You found me." Briggs didn't smile. He held a folder in one gloved hand and tapped it once against his thigh. "The state lab rushed preliminary tests. The water system's showing low-level contamination. Not lethal, but enough to confirm your suspicion." Jason absorbed the words with a slow tightening of his jaw. "It started already." "Yes," Briggs said, lowering his voice. "Something is bleeding into the reservoir lines, and whatever it is, it's chemically similar to what was found on Ranger Whitlow." Jason felt heat coil beneath his ribs, a quiet, simmering anger he rarely allowed to surface. Someone's testing doses, measuring effects. Briggs lifted a brow at the certainty in Jason's tone. "And how would you know that?" Jason held the chief's stare. "Because I've seen it before." Briggs seemed to read something in Jason's eyes that stopped his questions from going further. The chief opened the folder, revealing water system schematics printed in red and blue. "The contamination is coming from somewhere near the old military tunnels under the mountain. Most of them were sealed, but if someone found an access point, they could reach the filtration tanks," Jason finished. Briggs nodded grimly. "Exactly." Rex shifted beside Jason, tail lowering as if reading the rising tension. Briggs finally crouched, studying Rex with cautious respect. "This the dog everyone's murmuring about?" he asked. "The one who handled a suspect on his own?" Jason placed a light hand on Rex's back. "Rex doesn't handle suspects. He handles threats." Briggs huffed a single breath that almost resembled a laugh. Then his face returned to severity. "We need to find that tunnel. Today." Jason didn't hesitate. "Rex can track the chemical scent." Briggs's brows rose, though not in surprise. "Then he's our best shot." They started toward the forest, following the trail Jason and Rex had traveled the previous night. The wind whispered through the trees, brushing snow from pine needles in gentle cascades. But beneath the peaceful exterior was tension, an undercurrent of danger threading through the silence. Rex moved with purpose, his nose close to the frozen earth, following a scent invisible to human senses. As he tracked, Jason's mind replayed Emma Whitlow's pale face in the hospital, the uneven rise of her chest, the toxin, the exhaustion in Briggs' voice, the cave, the masked men, the broken vials. This wasn't random violence. It was structured, calculated, intentional. Jason's steps became firmer. He had failed too many people in his life. He would not fail this town. Rex stopped suddenly, body stiffening, ears pushing forward. Jason followed his line of attention to a cluster of bushes half buried in snow. Behind them, a slab of concrete jutted from the earth at an angle, coated in frost. An access hatch, once hidden, now exposed. Briggs approached it, brushing away ice with his glove. "This used to be part of an observation tunnel from the army installation," he said. "Sealed years ago. Or supposed to be." Jason gripped the rusted metal handle and pulled. The door groaned loudly, stiff from disuse, then released with a harsh scrape of metal. Cold, stale air rushed upward, carrying a faint chemical tang. Rex's hackles rose immediately. Jason leaned into the darkness. The descending ladder rungs were corroded but intact. Briggs flicked on his flashlight, revealing a narrow tunnel carved into the stone, lined with reinforcing steel beams and old wiring. "You sure about going down there?" Briggs asked, though the question was rhetorical. Jason was already stepping onto the ladder. "We don't have a choice," Jason replied. "They're ahead of us." Rex waited until Jason gave a hand signal before descending, hooking his paws with practiced precision onto the ladder steps. Briggs followed, wincing as the cold bit through his gloves. The tunnel stretched forward, echoes of their footsteps bouncing along its length. Pipes ran overhead, some cracked, some still carrying faint vibrations, water pressure shifting somewhere deeper inside the mountain. The chemical smell grew thicker. Rex's breaths quickened. Jason touched the dog's shoulder lightly, calming him with a quiet murmur. They emerged into a wider chamber, once a supply room. Old crates lay broken, and in the center stood a large cylindrical tank with hoses attached. The hoses led toward a mechanical pump humming faintly, the source of the contamination. Briggs cursed under his breath. "They're injecting it directly into the auxiliary line." Jason approached the tank, running his hand along its cold metal surface. The residue on its rim was the same powdery chemical scent from the cave. "This is their second batch," Jason said. "The first was a test. This one is meant to spread." A sudden metallic clang echoed. 3 figures stepped from the shadows, armed with pipes, knives, and improvised weapons. Jason scanned them instantly. The first man, tall and heavily built, had a shaved head and a deep scar crossing his forehead. His beard was full and unkempt, giving him the appearance of a man molded by violence. The second was smaller, wiry, with sunken cheeks and frantic eyes darting around as if searching for escape routes. His thin lips twitched constantly. Drug use, maybe, or fear. The third was broader and older, in his 40s, with a thick mustache and heavy jaw. His expression carried bitterness, as though life had repeatedly denied him something he believed he deserved. Briggs muttered, "Damn it." But Jason simply rolled his shoulders, expression hardening into the cold precision of a soldier returned to familiar ground. The tall man stepped forward. "You shouldn't be here." Jason's voice was low, steady. "You shouldn't be poisoning a town." The wiry man's laugh cracked like glass. "No one was supposed to find this place." Jason didn't respond. His mind was already assessing their angles, weight distribution, weak points. The fight erupted without warning. The tall man charged Briggs, swinging a pipe. Briggs deflected with his forearm, grunting as metal scraped his jacket, then tackled the man back into the wall. Jason intercepted the wiry man, who slashed with a knife. Jason stepped aside, caught the man's wrist, twisted sharply, forcing the knife to clatter to the floor. The older man came at Jason from behind, grabbing him in a chokehold. Jason slammed his elbow backward into the man's ribs, then again until the grip loosened. The wiry man lunged again, teeth clenched with desperation. Rex hit him mid-sprint, jaws clamping onto the man's sleeve with controlled force. The attacker screamed, collapsing to the floor. The older man grabbed a nearby container, hurling it toward Jason. The metal canister struck the tank and a spark erupted. A small explosion rocked the chamber. Not a fireball, but a concussive blast that sent dust and shards into the air. Pipes ruptured, releasing a cloud of smoke and chemical vapor. "Move!" Jason barked. The smoke thickened rapidly, swirling into a burning fog. Briggs coughed violently, dragging his suspect away from the tank. Jason reached for Rex, but the dog was already beside him, tugging at his sleeve. Rex pulled, urging him toward an emergency exit hatch near the floor. Jason dropped to one knee, coughing as the chemical haze scraped his lungs. His eyes burned. Rex barked sharply, a command to stay conscious. Jason pushed the hatch open and shoved Briggs' suspect through. Briggs stumbled after. Jason followed last, Rex backing out while keeping eyes on the collapsing tunnel. The hatch slammed shut behind them. They emerged into a lower ventilation shaft, coughing, covered in dust and chemical residue. Jason leaned against the concrete wall, chest burning with each inhale. Rex limped over, his left hind leg dragging slightly. Burn grazes and debris had cut the pad of his paw. Jason crouched, inspecting the wound with quick but gentle hands. "You held it together, buddy," he murmured. Rex pressed his head against Jason's arm, exhausted but alert. Briggs wiped soot from his face, panting. "They would have killed everyone," he said, "if that tank had gone off full blast." Jason nodded grimly. "We stopped this batch, but there'll be more." Briggs stared at him, eyes widening with dread. "This isn't the end?" Jason's gaze hardened, shifting back toward the tunnel where the shadows trembled like a lurking threat. "No," he said quietly. "This is only the beginning." Snow hammered the mountains with relentless force, the kind of storm that broke radio towers and swallowed entire roads beneath white avalanches. Wind roared like a living thing, tearing through the forest as Jason Hale pressed forward, each step sinking into drifts that rose nearly to his knees. His rugged tan combat uniform was coated in frost, sand-colored tactical pants stiff with ice, and the edges of his coyote-brown plate carrier glistened with frozen condensation. The cold pierced flesh, bone, and breath, but he drove on without hesitation. Rex moved beside him, limping but determined, his sable coat dusted white, amber eyes narrowed against the slicing wind. Pain radiated from the cut on his paw, but the 3-year-old Belgian Malinois refused to fall behind. No storm could override training, nor loyalty. Jason's jaw clenched as he replayed the contents of the phone they recovered. Text chains, chemical formulas, coordinates, digital traces leading not to a gang or to a cartel, but to one man. Leon Varner, age 37. A chemical engineer once respected across Colorado. Fired 2 years prior after several safety violations and unauthorized experiments. Colleagues described him as brilliant but volatile, a man whose intelligence far outpaced his emotional stability. He once had sharp features and controlled composure, but in recent sightings he was gaunt, eyes sunken, hair overgrown, and beard uneven, as though the world had worn away everything except his obsession. A man whose ego had curdled into vengeance. Jason followed Rex through the storm until the trusses of the Silver Ridge Water Control Station came into view. The structure loomed like a concrete skeleton against the whiteout, faint yellow lights flickering through reinforced windows. The storm gnawed at the building, slamming against metal siding with deafening howls. The station was half buried already. Another hour and the road would be impassable. He chose the storm, Jason muttered. Noise, chaos, no witnesses. Rex growled softly, confirming what Jason already sensed. Someone was inside. They approached the side entrance, partially shielded from the wind by steel support beams. Jason checked the door. Locked, but not reinforced. He stepped back and slammed his shoulder against it. Metal shrieked, then snapped free. The blast of warm air rushed out, carrying with it a faint chemical scent. Jason raised his guard. Rex positioned himself ahead despite the limp. They pushed into a narrow hallway lined with control panels. The lights flickered, powered by a generator that struggled beneath the storm's weight. Water dripped from a crack in the ceiling, hitting the floor in slow, rhythmic taps that echoed down the empty corridor. Jason's boots splashed quietly as he moved deeper. Then he heard it, faint humming, the low rumble of machinery warming up. He followed the sound to a room marked Primary Distribution, Authorized Personnel Only. The door was slightly ajar. Jason signaled Rex to stay low. He pushed it open. Inside, standing before a massive control console lit with red and yellow warnings, was Leon Varner. The man was tall, around 6 feet, though his posture had curled inward from years of stress and isolation. His once clean-shaven face was now obscured by a patchy beard. His messy brown hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. His skin was pale, almost sallow, and dark circles hollowed his eyes. His lab coat, stained with chemicals, hung loosely from his thin frame. Yet his movements were sharp, precise. He looked like a man possessed by his own genius and resentments. "You're too late," Varner said without turning. His voice was quiet, but it carried the jagged edges of a mind unraveling. "The system is primed. One switch, and Silver Ridge learns what it means to ignore brilliance." Jason stepped closer, muscles coiled. "Brilliance doesn't poison innocent people." Varner finally turned. His eyes reflected something Jason recognized from war zones, not evil, but conviction gone rotten. "Innocent?" he echoed. "They ruined me, fired me, mocked me, left me with nothing. So I'll leave them with nothing in return." "Emma Whitlow nearly died," Jason said. a park ranger. She wasn't part of your past." Varner hesitated, but only for a flicker. "Collateral damage," he replied. "Progress demands sacrifice." "No," Jason said quietly. "You're not looking for progress. You're looking for validation. This isn't science, it's revenge." Varner's lips twitched. "Funny how soldiers like you pretend to understand morality while bathing in blood." Jason felt the hit, but his expression remained stone. "You don't know me." "I know enough," Varner hissed. "Enough to see a killer hiding behind a uniform." Jason didn't respond. He didn't defend himself. He simply stepped forward. Varner's hand darted to the console. "Stay back!" The system beeped, an ominous tone. Rex barked sharply, claws scraping against the floor as he shifted his weight. Jason lunged. Varner swung a metal wrench he had hidden behind the console. Jason ducked, the wrench grazing his plate carrier with a metallic clang. Jason drove his shoulder into Varner's chest, knocking the wind from him. Varner staggered but managed to swing again, the wrench catching Jason's forearm. Pain pulsed through muscle, but Jason ignored it, seizing Varner's wrist and twisting sharply. The wrench clattered to the floor. Varner screamed, a feral sound, kicking Jason's knee with a surprising burst of strength. Jason grunted, stumbling back a step. Varner darted toward the control panel again. Rex leapt, despite his injured leg, slamming into Varner's side. The impact sent the engineer sprawling across the floor, papers and tools scattering. "Rex, off!" Jason commanded. Rex released immediately but stayed between Jason and Varner, teeth bared, low growl rumbling in his chest. Varner crawled quickly, scrambling toward a backup lever on the far side of the panel. Jason lunged again, tackling him before he could reach it. They crashed against the console, but lit. Alarms blared, pipes vibrated above them. Varner's nails scratched against metal as he tried to pull himself up. "You won't stop it!" he spat, desperation breaking through arrogance. "You don't understand the beauty of what I made!" "There's nothing beautiful about destruction," Jason growled. Varner clawed at a nearby valve switch. Jason grabbed his arm and slammed him back. Varner snarled and reached for a glass vial clipped to his belt. Jason's eyes widened. He slammed Varner's wrist against the console, forcing the vial to drop and shatter harmlessly onto the floor. Purple vapor hissed, eating into the metal. Jason dragged Varner away from it. "Your work ends here," Jason said. Varner writhed. "You don't get to decide that." "No," Jason said coldly. "Your choices did." Jason threw him to the ground, pinning him with his forearm across Varner's chest. Varner gasped, unable to break free. Rex stood guard, every muscle ready to strike. Jason looked at the console. Red warnings blinked violently. The release valve was halfway open. Pipes rumbled louder as pressure built. He had seconds, not minutes. Jason tightened his pin on Varner. "Stay down!" Varner thrashed. "If you stop it now, another storm will come. I am not the last!" Jason ignored him. He lunged for the lever. The heat from the pipes burned through his gloves. He gritted his teeth and forced the valve shut inch by inch. The machine screamed in protest. Bolts rattled. A plume of steam burst from the side. "Hold!" Jason growled to himself, muscles straining. Rex barked, urgent and sharp. The system spasmed, the pressure dangerously high. Jason shoved with everything he had, locking the lever fully into the off position. The alarms slowed, the vibrations quieted. The machine exhaled, its deadly cycle broken. Jason stumbled back, chest heaving. Rex limped to him, pushing his head against Jason's thigh. Jason rested a hand on the dog's neck, grounding himself. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Varner lay on the ground, defeated, his chest rising in shallow, frantic breaths. You ruined everything," he whispered. Jason's expression hardened. "No, I saved everyone." Outside, the blizzard raged, but inside the station, the danger had been contained. Jason secured Varner's wrists with zip ties left on the emergency rack. Rex sat beside him, injured but proud. amber eyes steady. Jason looked at the control panel one final time. The lights glowed green. The town was safe. For now. Morning broke softly over Silver Ridge, not with the violent howl of a storm or the harsh bite of mountain winds, but with a gentle warmth that melted overnight frost from the rooftops. The sky held the pale blue of early spring, though winter still clung stubbornly to the trees. For the first time in many days, there was no metallic taste of danger in the air, no distant hum of machines preparing for catastrophe, no pulse of dread beneath the town's heartbeat. Just stillness. And relief. Jason Hale stepped out of the hospital's main doors, his rugged tan combat uniform catching the early sunlight. Snow still clung faintly to the bottoms of his sand-colored tactical pants. His coyote brown plate carrier wasn't with him anymore. He had left it in the SUV, choosing instead to walk through town without the weight of armor. His clean, unscarred face looked slightly softer today, though his strong jaw and sharp cheekbones still carried the discipline etched into him by years of military life. Beneath the stoicism, however, was something new, something he wasn't used to wearing openly. Quiet peace. Rex trotted beside him, bandaged paw lifting gently with each step. The Belgian Malinois looked proud despite the injury, sable coat freshly brushed by one of the veterinary nurses. His tail wagged lazily, a sign that he understood their long fight had ended. They crossed the small plaza leading to the hospital parking area where Emma Whitlow stood waiting. The young park ranger leaned against a lamppost, bundled in a thick forest green coat, her chestnut hair pulled into a loose ponytail that framed her pale but steadily recovering face. She was tall, slender, with delicate features sharpened slightly by the ordeal she had survived. Her brown eyes, previously filled with fear and confusion, now carried gratitude and determination. "Morning," she said softly. "You're up earlier than the doctors expected." Jason nodded. "Couldn't sleep." Emma smiled faintly. "Neither could I. I remembered something." Jason tilted his head slightly, attentive. Emma folded her arms, trying to steady the tremor in her hands. Not from fear, but from the emotional weight of remembering her own attack. "That night, I heard something in the woods. A metal rattling sound like someone dragging equipment. I followed it because I thought it might be hikers in trouble." She paused, inhaling deeply. "I didn't expect to find people handling chemicals, and before I could call it in," she touched the side of her neck where the discoloration had nearly faded. Jason remained silent, giving her space to speak without interruption. Emma exhaled shakily. "I should have backed off, should have radioed sooner." "No," Jason said firmly. "You did your job. Someone else tried to stop you from doing it. That's not failure. That's courage." Emma blinked, caught off guard. Her eyes softened. "Thank you. For everything." Rex stepped closer, nudging her hand with his nose. Emma laughed gently and scratched behind his ears. "Especially you, hero." Rex closed his eyes, pleased. Jason watched them for a moment, then turned as footsteps approached from behind. Police Chief Donovan Briggs arrived, bundled in a dark navy coat, the hood pulled down to reveal his graying hair. His sharp brown eyes held a look of honest fatigue, but also relief. "Hale," he said. "You ready?" Jason raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" Briggs smirked. "Don't pretend you didn't see the invitations posted all over town." Jason's confusion deepened until Briggs sighed and gestured down the main street. "Come on, you'll see." They walked together, Emma trailing behind with Rex happily padding between her and Jason. As they turned the corner into Silver Ridge Plaza, Jason stopped completely. The entire town, dozens of people bundled in winter coats, was gathered in the square. Children perched on their parents' shoulders, flags waved gently, and strings of lights hung from shop windows. At the center stood a temporary wooden stage draped with banners reading, "Silver Ridge honors its guardians." The mayor, a short, balding man with rosy cheeks and a warm smile, stood proudly at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "our hero has arrived." Applause erupted. Jason stiffened instinctively, muscles tensing, posture straightening as if bracing for impact. Crowds had never felt comfortable to him, not even during military ceremonies. Too many eyes, too little control. Briggs leaned closer. "Relax, this one's not about judgment." Jason nodded once, though his jaw remained tight. He reluctantly stepped forward. Children pointed excitedly at Rex, adults whispered to each other, and the atmosphere lifted with a collective wave of gratitude. The mayor gestured for Jason and Rex to join him on stage. Jason moved with disciplined grace, Rex limping slightly but refusing to let it slow him. When they reached the podium, the mayor's voice carried through the plaza. "Jason Hale and Rex prevented the single greatest threat our town has ever faced. Without them, Silver Ridge would be mourning instead of celebrating." Applause thundered. Jason swallowed hard, uncomfortable beneath the praise. The mayor lifted a small velvet box. "And now, a very special honor for a very special member of this team." He knelt, awkwardly but sincerely, slipping a ribbon over Rex's head. The medallion glinted gold and silver, engraved with the words, "Bravery and Loyalty, Silver Ridge." Rex's ears perked. The crowd erupted again. Jason, despite himself, smiled. A real one, soft and brief. "He earned it," the mayor said, standing. "Now, as for Jason Hale." Jason braced again, shoulders tightening. The mayor continued gently, "Silver Ridge is a small town. We don't have medals big enough for what you did. But we do have this." A wooden plaque was lifted, handcrafted, polished, engraved with, "To the man who stood between Silver Ridge and danger." Jason accepted it silently. Words failed him, something that rarely happened even in war. Instead, he placed a hand on Rex's head. The dog leaned against him. The applause grew softer, warmer, more personal. And slowly, Jason felt the weight inside him shift. Less burden, more belonging. After the ceremony, people approached to thank him. He kept conversations short, polite but reserved. Briggs remained nearby, acting as a buffer when crowds pressed too close. Emma walked beside him as if they had known each other far longer than a few traumatic nights. As the square emptied and the sun climbed higher, melting patches of snow into glittering water, Jason finally allowed himself to breathe freely. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" Emma asked. "Being appreciated?" Jason smirked faintly. "I'm still adjusting." She laughed. "Well, Silver Ridge is adjusting to you too." They wandered together back toward the mountain trail where Jason often walked. Rex trotted ahead, tail wagging as though rediscovering joy after weeks of tension. "What will you do now?" Emma asked. Jason paused. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. For so long he had drifted, station to station, base to base, conflict to conflict. Belonging had always felt temporary, fleeting, a mirage. But now, he looked around. The crisp air, the pines whispering gently, the mountains standing silent like old guardians, and the town, alive because he and Rex had chosen to stay and fight. "I think," Jason said slowly, "I might stay a while." Emma's smile widened. "Silver Ridge could use someone like you." Jason's heart settled. Maybe I could use a place like Silver Ridge, too. They reached a clearing where the storm had once howled fiercely. Today, sunlight scattered across the snow, turning it into a field of tiny mirrors. Rex barked happily and pounced toward a loose snowball. Jason chuckled and picked it up. "Ready?" Rex crouched playfully. Jason tossed the snowball high. Rex leapt, joyful, free, catching it mid-air as it burst into white powder around him. Jason laughed quietly, warmth blooming in his chest. For the first time in years, danger wasn't the next certainty. For the first time, peace didn't feel like a lie. Silver Ridge had been saved. Rex healed. Emma recovered. Briggs steadied the town. And Jason found something he didn't realize he'd lost, the right to belong somewhere. And as the clear blue sky stretched above them, untouched by storm or shadow, Jason Hale knew one truth with absolute clarity. He was home. Sometimes the greatest miracles don't arrive with thunder or light, but in quiet moments, like a loyal dog standing between danger and the innocent, or a worn soldier finding the courage to rise one more time. Silver Ridge was saved not by superpowers, but by the simple, powerful choices of ordinary hearts refusing to give up. In everyday life, we may never face poisoned waters or storms that swallow mountains, but we do face fear, doubt, loneliness, and moments when we wonder if our actions matter. They do. Every small kindness, every brave step, every time you choose what is right over what is easy, you create a miracle of your own. And if you ever feel lost, remember this story. Healing is real. Hope returns. Belonging is possible. And sometimes God sends guardians in unexpected forms. A soldier, a loyal dog, or even the strength quietly placed in your own heart. If this story touched you even a little, I invite you to share it with someone who might need a reminder that goodness still wins. Tell us in the comments about a moment of courage, loyalty, or faith in your own life. And if you want more stories of resilience, miracles, and second chances, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for future chapters. May God bless you, protect your family, and guide your steps wherever the road leads. Amen.